Hi, I'm Jill O'Connell, and this is One on Wednesday. Joining me today is Theda Page, an attorney who works in both family law and bankruptcy, to talk to us about a somewhat common issue when those two worlds collide. Has her own office, the Page Law Firm, and I just want to say thanks for joining me today, Theda.
Hey, Jill, thanks for inviting me to chat with you.
Well, I am looking forward to it. As I said to you, I don't do many cases with family law and bankruptcy at the same time. So I am looking forward to what you've got to say to folks who find themselves wanting or needing a divorce when they're in the middle of a Chapter 13 bankruptcy.
And it does happen. A lot of times I tell people, sometimes when people come to see me about a bankruptcy, it's not surprising if the husband and wife are kind of sniping at each other because, money problems can lead to a divorce. And so sometimes I tell people a bankruptcy might save your marriage, but that doesn't always happen because a Chapter 13 is it's a repayment plan of your debts. And it's anywhere from a 3 to a 5 year repayment plan. And even though time flies, 3 to 5 years can be a long time when you're trying to work together on money matters. And so sometimes in the middle of that, people decide, I want out of the marriage. I'm going to go get a divorce. And so they go hire a divorce lawyer, but they're in the middle of a Chapter 13. You have to do what's called lift the bankruptcy stay. That's your bankruptcy protection from creditors in order to proceed with your divorce. Because your divorce is dividing your assets and your liabilities, but you're over here in bankruptcy in federal court, and the federal court has jurisdiction over your assets and your liabilities. So you may think this is easy, it's straightforward, but the judge in state court is going to say to your lawyer, I'm sorry, Mr. Jones, I'm really going to need to see that order from the federal court that says that I can proceed to get you and Mrs. Jones divorced. And it's not a hard process in the bankruptcy court to get the stay lifted, but you do have to do it. There is a filing fee associated with it. There's a motion that has to be filed. Your creditors and all parties in interest have to be given notice that you want the bankruptcy stay lifted because you want to get a divorce. And then once you get that divorce, as you're trying to sort out who gets the knives, who gets the forks, who gets the cars, who's going to pay for the cars, who's going to pay for the kids, you also have to figure out, what are we going to do with this Chapter 13 bankruptcy? I've had some instances where one party, because both of them really do want that bankruptcy discharge, one party will say, as part of the divorce, I'm going to agree to keep making the bankruptcy payments so that we can finish our bankruptcy case and get a discharge. And so I have seen divorce decrees that say, Mr. Jones will make the bankruptcy payment. So that way they do have the benefit of the process that they started. I've also seen situations where they decide they're going to get a divorce and they decide, okay, we're going to split the bankruptcy payment. And one person doesn't pay their half. And then the case gets dismissed.
Oh, so the bankruptcy gets totally dismissed.
Yeah, because somebody didn't hold up their end of the bargain. And then they might, on the other side of the divorce, the good thing, if the case gets dismissed, you don't have to get the stay lifted, but then not only do you have a divorce, but now you have creditors coming after you. So you've created more chaos in an already chaotic situation.
Right. And understandably, more stress more issues with all of that that you were trying to deal with and potentially on your way to handling if you are already in that bankruptcy, right?
Right, right.
If someone had to get the stay lifted and file the motion, give notice to the creditors, how long does that typically take?
So it can be a quick process because you have to give everybody notice and they have 14 days to object. And
Okay.
typically, no one's going to object to that. And so you can get your order entered pretty quickly. So if you want to say from the time you retain a lawyer to file that motion to lift stay until you have an order, it might be 3 weeks or less. So it's not something that's going to drag out the divorce.
Oh, well, that is good news.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What, in your practice, do you focus more on family law or bankruptcy?
I focus more on bankruptcy.
But for those people who find themselves then in that situation, you could do both parts?
Um, so it depends.
Okay.
Because, as you well know, a divorce is a lawsuit, and those two parties have different interests. And so those two people can't have the same lawyer. And even though I could get a waiver from a client that says, we know you represented both of us in the bankruptcy, now we want you to represent one of us in the divorce, I usually like both of my clients, and so I really don't want to do that. So,
yeah.
But there have been instances where I've helped them because I've only represented one person in a bankruptcy. And then that person decides their bankruptcy is over. I want a divorce now. In fact, I have a client who's like that. She was my bankruptcy client 10 years ago. I did not represent her husband. I only represented her in the bankruptcy. And she came back 10 years later and said, I had so much fun with you in that bankruptcy. Let's do a divorce now. Those are rare situations, but they do happen.
Yeah.
But I'm very careful about that because like I said, I like my clients and I don't want to be adverse to one or the other.
I understand that. I would feel the same way. And I think though sometimes people do feel like they were on the same side when they were going through that bankruptcy. So probably Theda could represent us in the divorce or represent me in the divorce, as opposed to it being a lawsuit and their interests, although they might both want a divorce, are probably going to separate at that point. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of conversations in that regard.
I would think so. I would absolutely think so.
Because people say, I know you do this.
That's what I was thinking, that someone's out there thinking, oh, she does both. That's perfect for me. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And then what other sort of, I'm going to say, areas should people think about if they find themselves either, maybe the shoe's on the other foot. Cases are taking a little bit longer now, divorce cases, than they have in the past, simply because of court schedules and dockets. And what if they find themselves in the middle of a divorce and think, we've got to do a bankruptcy? Is that ever a possibility?
It is probably not a Chapter 13 because that is a 3 to 5 year situation. But if they qualify, they might be able to do a Chapter 7, and they might be able to get their Chapter 7 over and done with before their divorce is completed.
Oh, okay.
Because that time frame is pretty short. That's about 90 to 100 days. And so much of that is electronic that there really hasn't been a COVID slowdown. There was a COVID slowdown initially, but not, the federal system is running, pretty much trains running on time in that regard.
Okay.
You file your case, about 30 days later, you have your creditors meeting, 60 to 90 days, you have your discharge. So things are running pretty smoothly in that regard. And a divorce can take much longer than that.
Oh, absolutely. Considering we have a 60-day waiting period at the front end anyway. And those ones that happen on day 61 or day 62 are few and far between, uh,
Yes.
as we know. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Theda, for visiting with me today about some of these just very general areas of bankruptcy and specifically that Chapter 13 question. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure that this information is going to be helpful to those who find themselves in that situation. And I appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me, and I look forward to watching you on Wednesdays.
Well, thank you. And before we close, Theda, why don't you tell everybody how they can reach you, either phone number or social media? Where can they find you?
Okay, phone number is 214-618-2101. On Instagram, I'm Theda Page, ThedaPage, so that's pretty straightforward, and pagelawfirm.com, and that's Page, just like page in a book.
All right, great. Thanks again, Theda. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.